sounded awesome.
Yes.
I know Brandon's looking at me like, well, it wasn't even very loud in the room, but it was loud enough. And even though
Yeah.
we're doing a million other things,
Yes. We just got
we're
told
listening.
to be quiet.
Well, that's our new thing here. It's we're upping the level of professionalism here at that channel, and we're going to prove that right now by speaking with Tibor Shanto,
No pressure.
sales guru. Do you like us saying that, Tibor?
We
I
talked
mentioned-
about that
I-
last time.
Yeah, I mentioned, I'm like, I don't think he's up with that, but
I don't
it's
know.
kind of stuck with us.
Yeah, as I say, I can raise my prices to guru prices.
See,
but-
there you go, guru prices. Now we're talking about sales, of course,
All the time.
but I mean, you mentioned you've been on the show
Many, many times.
many times before, and you mentioned at least a couple of times that prospecting is not people's favorite thing to do.
No, most salespeople don't like prospecting. I would have to say that I'm not big on prospecting either. It's sort of God's punishment to salespeople. And then when he wanted to show he has a sense of humor, he created voicemail and all those things. But it is a necessary part of success in selling. So while I don't like it, and a lot of people I know don't like it, the problem is that many people who don't like it choose not to follow through on it. And as a result of that, they create a number of negative consequences for their sales.
Like their sales funnel is empty.
That sort of thing. It's nice and clean, but not much going on. Or the other thing they tend to do is go out and go on binge prospecting. They'll do a blitz, which has different meanings in different neighborhoods, but they'll do a blitz and their pipeline will be full, but they'll keep everything there regardless of whether it belongs or not, because they know if they take something out, the
Right.
reality of having to replace it pops up.
Or they end up like a snake, right? They eat a big rabbit and then there's a big lump going through,
Right.
right?
It's
You
an
got
interesting analogy. I might use that in the future.
You want to keep that so it's even,
Yes.
Even a snake
Right.
needs to be good looking if they're to attract snake mates.
Well, I'm not sure we want to talk about snakes and salespeople.
That's right.
Well, I wasn't meaning to compare salespeople to snakes, but it's
No.
just a crazy metaphor.
But an apropos one.
Okay, so I mean, what are some of the strategies that people should?
I think one of the strategies they need to do is understand what they're doing. I think one of the reasons that they don't like prospecting is primarily because they have a fear of rejection. They don't like the objections that they're going to get and so on, but they really don't put a lot of effort or study into it. They'll put a lot of effort and study into the other part of selling, but not much into prospecting. So I think the major part of it is really a lack of understanding of what the exercise is all about and how to, as a result of understanding, to execute it in a consistent way.
Yeah, okay, so I'm getting the idea that there's a bit of an art and or science, and I think we've had a bit of a
Yeah.
discussion
Yeah.
about that, to the other aspects of the whole sales process. But what you're saying, I think, is that there is some art and science that can be applied to the prospecting process.
Absolutely. I think, again, if you look at it, for instance, when I talk to a lot of salespeople and they talk about the fact that they don't like the rejection, if they were to look at the stats, if they were to keep metrics, they'd find that the rejection level for a proper prospecting exercise is really no worse than it is for proposals that end up being submitted but don't get accepted by the client. Depending which studies you read, roughly from handshake to close, about 15% of opportunities close.
15?
1-5.
Okay.
That's based on qualified leads. They'll meet with you, and then it's up to you to convince them to
From
continue the
handshake to
process.
close. So
Right.
that's after the prospecting process,
Right.
right?
But if you take the prospecting stats, depending on the industry, and it does vary, it's not much worse. It's somewhere between 16 to 20% of people that you reach out to, people that you talk to, you will get an appointment with. The question is, how do you keep the people on the phone, and so on. So I think one of the things that people can do to take some of the mystery or the unknown out of it is actually begin to use metrics the same way they use in the post once they shake the hand. So a lot of many salespeople, I wouldn't say a lot, but many salespeople can talk to you about what their conversion rate is, a proposal to close, prospect to proposal, but they can't tell you what their conversion rate is of conversation to potential appointment. So I think one of the things they could do is demystify it by actually putting some quantification around it. The other is they have to realize that at the end of the day, what's being rejected is not them personally, but the whole notion of the interruption. When I make cold calls, unless I'm scheduled on that person's calendar, I'm interrupting that person.
Oh man,
Right.
I got to tell you, I mean, and I think people now are busier than ever, and it seems to be just, I don't know if it's just me, but everybody's just running around like crazy these days,
Right.
even trying to keep up with their emails. And sometimes I'm going trying to get through them, and then I get a phone call. It might even be my best friend,
Right.
And I'm going, okay, yep, what? You
We're
know, like
cutting
I'm
away
just,
from
because
the
I'm
real stuff.
trying to get some stuff done.
So again, what I call is interruptive marketing, right? So my role as a person who's trying to make cold calls, who makes cold calls and trying to get appointments, is to interrupt somebody and say something compelling and intelligent enough to extend that conversation for them to say, you know what, yeah, we should meet. So as a result of that, I think people are looking for ways to avoid rejection, and they found it by not making the call, because that's about the only way to avoid rejection. Because as you say, people are trying to pack 16 hours into a 10-hour day. At the moment that they reject you, they're evaluating, do I want to take time away from my to-do list, which might be something that I have to deliver to my boss, my company, what have you, or do I want to deal with this unknown? And 99 times out of 100, unless you manage that moment, they're going to let go of the unknown and go back to what it is that they've already had planned for that day. So the first thing I think salespeople need to do is avoid trying to avoid a rejection and know that it's coming. And the real question is, what do you do with it when it comes? And that's where I think, again, there is, if not a science, a set of practices that you can do to deal with rejection. And there's only so many. So
Okay, let's talk about that, because it's weird, because on the one hand, you know it, and you know it's not personal.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know that this is just a necessary part of the job. But I got to tell you, and I've done it, you know, where I was on the phone doing the whole smile and dial routine, right? And but
Is
it's
that what the mirror is about?
no. But it's like time goes so slow when you're doing that smile and dial, and you got to go through all that. What are some of the strategies people can do?
I think, again, you need to set targets. So we go back to metrics, and it goes right back that if you need so many clients, how many proposals, how many prospects, to get those prospects, how many appointments. So by setting targets and putting something measurable on it, it makes it manageable. Again, I'm not saying bearable. I know exactly what you mean. I bang my head against the desk every morning when I make calls, but not on the call, between calls. Somebody pointed out an interesting stat to me, that if you have targets, you can manage towards them. So they pointed out that apparently in the U.S. Army, when they put somebody through basic training when they first join the Army, after a few weeks of training, they tell them to go and run to the horizon. And they keep running, and most soldiers, apparently, according to the study, drop after about 15 miles. And their theory is that because they tell them to run to the horizon, there's no measurable, there's no way to work things out, and so on. Yet most people, if you give them the chance to run a marathon, they'll plan it out, they'll do it step by step, and what seems to be long distance becomes a manageable process. So I think one of the things they need to do is understand how much they actually have to prospect, do it on a regular basis, and do it based on some target that is logically going to feed their pipeline, as you said earlier.
You know, I just have a little example about that. It's like when I used to be a courier, okay, in a car. So I was driving, and I was like very goal-oriented, right? Nothing would get in my way. I would just put the obstacles behind me. Now I commute by bicycle when the weather's good, not today. But what I do is I try to make every green light. I don't want to get stopped by a red light. And you know what I find is that I am not even thinking about how tired I might be, or how out of breath I might be, or how much my muscles hurt. I just want to get through that light. That's the only thing that matters.
Right.
And that's what you're saying people need to do when they're in this process.
I think, yeah, they need to break it down to manageable pieces, because if they keep thinking about the last 5 rejections they had and so on, it's going to become bigger and bigger. And it does, as you say, no matter how thick a skin you pretend to have, it does penetrate.
What? Sorry, it's all kind of connected, but I've been wanting to ask about confidence, because often if you're confident, you have motivation, and no matter, it helps you not take things personally. And no matter what someone is experiencing or doing at the other end, you're still going to have that motivation to continue because you're confident in what you do. It seems that people who are avoiding this process maybe need some help in their confidence as well.
I think confidence is one. I certainly think as a salesperson, greed is another. One of the things that keeps me going, is the greed. I think we talked at one time that when I used to smoke, it was easier because I used to say no cigarette till we get to an appointment. So whatever that short-term motivation is, you need to have it in place. I think the other is you need to connect it to the actual outcome. So for a lot of salespeople, they look at prospecting as being something different than selling. And I think they need to see the connection. As you said earlier, if you don't prospect, there's not going to be much in the pipeline. and you may get a call from a customer or what have you. So I think having a methodology, even if we don't call it a complete science, is something that's going to help them through because, again, whether it's confidence or just, again, a bad day, if you stick to the methodology, it does help you get past the rough spots.
Okay.
So let's talk about what some of those methods, now you already mentioned some, but, should people take a certain amount of time per day or per week or?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in doing it in short bursts because, again, I don't like it. So the less that I have to suffer on any given day, the better it is. So I believe in doing it in short bursts for that reason. The other is that there are a number of organizations that have what they call Friday blitzes or whatever. And they'll get on the phone all morning, they'll bring in the donuts, and, they'll make the calls. Problem is what happens if you have a really important appointment on that Friday morning.
Yeah.
You have to go to it, and now your entire opportunity
System
to
is
get new
gone.
prospects is,
Yeah.
it's taken offline. So I think doing it every day is more bearable to me. The other is I like to do it in the morning. So if I get that appointment in the morning, I leave the office already with a bounce in my feet. As you say, that confidence comes back because no matter what happens, I know I filled the other end of the funnel. So I'm a believer in doing it, if not every day. I'd be lying to you if I said that I do it every day. At least 3-4 times a week in short bursts based on the number of prospects or appointments that you actually need, again, based on metrics. So there's no right number or wrong number. It's a question of working backwards from how many sales do I need, how many proposals, how many prospects, and how many people do I have to set appointments with to get that initiated or going.
I mean, that raises the question, is there a best time of day or is there a best day of the week? Now, you're talking about these companies on a Friday and with the donuts.
Right.
But what do you have to say about that?
No, I think that depending on the nature of your sale, it does have to vary. So for me, and I emphasize for me, and again, my target audience is VPs of sales or directors of sales or above. I tend to find for me in the morning is good because the so-called personal assistants that used to be called gatekeepers, but it's sort of a negative, aren't there. The individuals are clearer of mind. There's a lot of myth that Monday morning is not good. I find for me Monday morning is quite successful because people come in and they've had the weekend to decompress, and as a result of that, they're more open to ideas. And if I can connect with that, I create an opening. Having said that, if you're targeting, I worked with one company that was targeting primarily plant managers, and they were diligently making calls every morning. But they weren't having a lot of success. And when we examined where the plant managers were at the time that they were calling them based on their own experience, they were out on the shop floor fixing things, doing things that went wrong overnight. We found out that they go back to their office at about 10 in the morning, and we switched our calling time to 10 in the morning. So I think that for each industry, there's going to be a time that's better than others, but I don't think universally there's one good time versus another. So
Right.
it takes experimentation. The other, I encourage people not to get into that mind frame because then they find excuses for not making appointment setting calls if they have an opening in an afternoon. And I think if you have a half hour between appointments, you can either sit at Starbucks and play something on your iPhone, or you can sit at Starbucks and make appointments.
And that's a great thing too, because if you know you've only got half an hour, then you know that in half an hour
Torture is
that
over.
the torture's over, and you're going to be on your way doing something else. What about? I mean, we're talking about like things are, slowly changing, right? I mean,
Right.
we've got the internet now. People seem to be really busy now. Does that inform your strategy in terms of what you actually say, or how you think about what you're going to say when you actually connect with somebody?
Not that much. So that's not to say that it's not an important change and doesn't impact it. It does help in terms of creating awareness, targeting audiences through social media, and I think we talked about that, about how to keep your name out there, how to follow an audience. But when you're actually on the phone with that individual, in light of the fact that they're busy and they have specific mandates and they're being paid for certain things, you still have to talk in a way that resonates with what they're trying to achieve. So I think the internet, social media are very important to get you to that point, but there comes that moment, what I call the last inch, when you have to pick up the phone and talk to that person. It doesn't matter how much interaction you may have had through Twitter, Facebook, this, that. At one point, you got to pick up the phone and try and get a meeting. And at that particular instance, I don't think the internet changes what you say, what the business challenges that they have, and what the solution that you might be able to offer does impact it.
Now, how do you do that? Is there, though, like, do you need to get the, I think you need to get to the point quickly. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you got to really get through to them very quickly to the point where they're going to go, I'm going to spend some time either talking to this fellow right now or setting up an appointment
You
later on.
definitely have to get to the point, and the point you have to get to is not the one that your marketing department's telling you to talk about, but it's the point that the individual at the other end of the phone is thinking about at that particular moment. So you do have to do your work in advance. So if you're going to be calling a particular person in a particular industry, you do have to know what potentially the top 5 issues or objectives they might have for the near term and talk to those things. And again, one of the things that salespeople fail to do is to capture what they did correctly in the last few sales they had. So if you remember, I was here talking about my book in the fall. One of the things that we talk in there about is take a look at what were consistently factors that were there in winning accounts and talk to those. The other is, again, in terms of internet, if you are targeting, let's say, an engineering guy in an auto plant, then the internet is great for finding out what are the objectives, what are the challenges, what are they trying to achieve. And those are the things that you have to talk to, because chances are that's what they were thinking about just before you called. So if you pick up the phone and you're on track with what they're talking about, there's a greater likelihood that they'll talk to you. But if you pick up the phone and start talking about we're a Fortune 500 company, frankly, who cares, you know?
Yeah. So a little bit of internet research. Trying to
Definitely,
find out
that's
what
where the
issues
internet
are.
comes in, yeah.
What about kind of doing it a little bit different way when you pick up the paper that morning and you're reading and you're seeing, oh, this industry is now facing this issue and so forth.
Yeah.
And if any of those are in your target, do you go after those right then and
Absolutely,
there?
yeah. You read them, it's current, especially if it's, again, within your sweet spot. So, you know, I read an article about a year and a half ago about a bank that was trying to do something with small business. I had success with another bank. I have a case study on my website about the work that I did. So there was an instant match and an instant reason for me to call. And I had the benefit of being able to dangle a competitive name in front of him, which caught their attention. And as a result, we started a discussion. We haven't done a deal yet, but we started a discussion.
The sales funnel has got something in it, at least,
Yes,
right?
it's got an irritant.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what about things like voicemail?
I love them.
Oh.
I think if people don't leave a voicemail, they should leave the business. You know, I often talk to people, so I'm a big proponent of voicemail. One of my biggest accounts in terms of value, quality, and so forth came from a voicemail. And when I called him up, he said, oh, we already have a trainer and we worked through the whole thing. But a lot of people will not leave voicemail. Most salespeople won't leave voicemail. And when I ask them why, they say, oh, because they'll never call back. And I say, well, unless they're clairvoyant, they can call back because you didn't leave a message or a number to call with.
But that's a whole, I mean, in a way, that's a new technology. Well, maybe 20, 30 years now. But, you know, is there a strategy in terms of the kind of message that you leave somebody on a voicemail?
So I use a particular method that was taught to me, and it works. I get about half the messages I leave, I get a call back within about 72 hours.
That's pretty, I mean, that's an awesome ratio.
I like that, yeah.
Do you find it's a way for your personality to come through so people want to call you back as
'cause
well, or is it?
to me, the voicemail is all about being cryptic.
Okay.
If you listen to most outbound messages, they always say, please leave a detailed message. And everybody leaves a detailed message, and the person knows exactly why they don't want to call you back.
Right.
So I say be counterintuitive and be very specific. So, you know, it's on my blog if somebody wants to look at it, and we'll give the address later, but it's a very simple method. I give my name and my company name. And again, in my case, I say Renbor. I don't say Renbor Sales Solutions because that sounds like it has an invoice attached to it, so we don't want that. And then I give them my phone number. And again, rather than saying something silly like, please call me back at your earliest convenience, which really smells like a salesperson on the phone, I say I can be reached at, and I say in a very authoritative, projecting right into the phone. Say your phone number slowly so they can write it down because it really bothers people when they have to rewind.
Yeah.
So the technique is quite simple. Picture yourself writing that number. So I picture holding a pen, and that's the speed at which I say the phone number. And then I leave them a direct third-party reference that they would be a competitor to them. So if, for instance, we've done, as an example, if they've done business with Molson's and I'm prospecting Labatt's, then I would leave Molson's as a reference, and that's the voicemail. And for
Smart.
them, the goal is to call back and find out why is this person who didn't give me a lot of detail leaving me a message with reference to my competitor.
Very smart, and it's the little tricks that work, and you know.
Yeah, tricks is, there's sort of tricks, techniques, and methodologies. This is a trick, but it's a trick that works.
Right.
And when they call back, I do regularly get asked, why did you leave that as a reference? And I tell them that I call a lot of different people. This helps me understand which vertical you're in, and then I go straight into my regular introduction. But people, as I say, do call back. In the 7 years I've been doing it, only 2 people have threatened to call my mother. So, you know, I figure,
I love it.
yeah, so the odds of that, again, they're the anomalies. So again, a lot of salespeople tell me that one time in 1962 somebody said something nasty to them. But that's the one. If you look at the averages, that 50% call back. Of those, I could show you repeated clients. To me, I'll take the hit from the one that's going to call my mother.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's always going to be criticism.
Yeah, so I think, again, people psych themselves out because they don't keep a track or an accurate picture of things. And if you look at it and you look at the number of people who've called me back, the number of business that I got out of it, I'm really not going to get excited about the two that called me nasty names for
Yeah.
the trick that I used.
Yeah.
Right.
And keep that goal in mind. The greed. Greed works.
Yeah, well, it's a
Well,
motivator for
it's
some.
a motivator.
Yeah.
It's it's just it's survival. It's sustainability. That's what it is.
And the other, just to add to one quick thing, is the other, these days is clearly email. I mean, I think people need to use email as an initial approach because chances are, more people are going to be interacting with their BlackBerry as an email thing than they are as a phone. And I'm pushing now, and I've had a lot of pushback, but I do think that the next thing you'll find is prospecting through text messaging. It's
Really?
getting there already for retail, and I think you're going to see it become more and more, shall we say not the norm, but it's going to be more and more of a reality, I think, in B2B sales. So the question is, do you wait until it's accepted, or do you get ahead of the curve and figure out how to do it?
We,
Wow.
we should
So-
talk more about that next time because some
Ma-
people take text messaging a little personally, but I guess it depends on where they're at and what they're using it for.
It's probably going to take a whole new psychology to deal with that new medium.
Yeah, I
But,
would love to talk more about that.
So yeah,
next
maybe
time
we
you're
can drill
back.
down
Yeah.
a little on some of these
We'll
things.
come up with a name.
The next time.
Spam, text message, stamp,
What I know we by the way we're just the D&E show is coming up momentarily, but the email is that a good way to prospect, or is it what do you?
I think it is, but I think, again, you have to understand what you're doing in prospecting. Both with email and voicemail, I'm not looking to do anything other than get a call back. So I think of it like a sonar thing where I send out a ping. If it comes back, then I can deal with it.
Yeah.
So, and it's part of an ongoing process. So I don't expect instant results.
No, but it starts the conversation.
It starts
right?
that conversation. And again, it comes down to what you say and how you say it. And again, most people want to dump a lot of information, whereas if you want to call back, create a mystery. You ever been to a party and you're talking about a movie and you can't remember the actor's name?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then finally you remember and there's this sense of relief. So that's the sort of
Right.
mystery that you want to create in voicemail or email.
Okay, well, that's certainly food for thought. And
Thank
of
you.
course, people who want more information, they can get in touch with you because you are a sales guru.
So I'm told. Yeah.
How can people get in touch?
Well, the easiest thing is to call me at 416-822-7781. Alternatively, they can go to my website, which is www.sellbetter, SELLBETTER. Once again, I'll hear it from my daughter, .ca, or they can send me an email at tibor.shanto@sellbetter.ca.
And the great thing is this is even what we're doing right now is prospecting.
I
because
hope so.
This is going to be all over the internet, and then people will watch it,
That's
and they'll
right.
go, oh, I need to get in touch with Tibor, and then they'll call you, and
Yeah.
and you were just here having fun,
And
having
if
this great
four
conversation.
people can call me, they can spare me the agony of prospecting next week.
Exactly. So, yeah. Don't
Perfect.
wait for Tibor to call you. Call
'Cause I
Tibor.
will.
That's right.
Yes.
All right, Tibor Shanto, thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in, as
Thank
always.
you.
Thank you.
All right, so that's it for the show, Aaron.
Yes.
So
Another
we'll
great
just
Friday.
Yeah, so we'll say bye-bye. Stay tuned, everybody. The DNA show coming up in about 1 minute. And we'll see you all on Monday for more Liquid Lunch right here on thatchannel.com.